Go ahead and get started as soon as you're ready.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقاعدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم كذبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترت وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلت وكم من عثار وقيت وكم من مكروه دفعت وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرت. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بخيانتها ومطالي يا سيدي. فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي، وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا، وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك، إلهي وربي من لي غيرك، إلهي وربي من لي غيرك، أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي، ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء، فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك، وخالفت بعض أوامرك، فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك، وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا، مستغفرا منيبا، مقرا مذعنا معترفا، لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني، ولا مفزعا نتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري، وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي. يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي، أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك، وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك، ولهج به لساني من ذكرك، واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خادعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت، أو تبعد من أدنيت، أو تشرد من آويت، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا. ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا رب، وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها، وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكر قليل مكثو يسير بقاء قصير مدته، فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الهقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها أدج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته؟ فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي، صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وهبني صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها دجيج الآملين، ولا أصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولا أبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولا أنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفا أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأنت جل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي، وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم، والشاهد لما خفي عنهم، وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت، وأن توفر حظي من كل خير تنزل أو إحسان تفضل أو بر تنشر أو رزق تبسط أو ذنب تغفر أو خطأ تستر. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي. يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي، يا من بيده ناصيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي. أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا، وبخدمتك موصولا، وأعمالي عندك مقبولا، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا، وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي، يا ربي قو على خدمتك جوارحي، واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي، وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في المبادرين، وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد، ومن كادني فكد، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك. وجد لي بجودك، واعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي، واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة، فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني مناي، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريع الرضا، يا سريع الرضا، يا سريع الرضا، اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء. يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء. يا سابغ النعم، يا دافع النقام، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وافعل بي ما أنت أهله. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome everybody to our Dua Kamil program. Please welcome Syed Abbas with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. Before we begin, let's recite a Surah Fatiha and 3 Qul Huwallahu Ahad. For the father of Brother Muhammad, Sayyid Muhammad and Sayyid Hassan. The father name is Sayyid Mahmoud Fakhruddin. Let's recite Fatiha and 3 Qul Huwallahu Ahad for him, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. inshallah, this majlis will be rewarded, gifted to him, and may Allah give his family members patience, inshallah, and the marhum Jannah, inshallah, paradise. The month of Rajab is a month that has many different events in it. And as you know, because it's Thursday, we have our programs weekly. We try to cover and not miss out on events that happen. And one of those is the 25th of the month of Rajab is the Istishhad and Shahadat of Imam Musa Al-Kadhim alayhi salam, which will be this Saturday night. And because we don't have a program here for it, I thought that it was important for us to talk about his holy life, to learn lessons from him. And for us as followers of Ahlul Bayt, for us is always a sense of pride when we talk about the lives of Imams, because we can find these throughout books of history. We find them not only in Shia sources, we find them throughout history, that the lives of the Imams alayhim salam were unparalleled by anybody. Their lives and even the graves of the Imams, and how we have in books of history that even Sunni ulama would visit the grave of Musa ibn Ja'far in Baghdad to get their hawa'ij, to get their du'as answered. So therefore, when we think of Imam Musa Al-Kadhim alayhi salam, and we think of this holy Imam, what attributes come to mind? What do we think about? One is we think of his madhlumiyat, being oppressed, because we don't have a situation where other Imams were imprisoned for so long. And yes, other Imams were in places of watch. They watched over them, like the Imams of Askariyin in Samarra. But when it comes to Imam Musa Al-Kadhim alayhi salam, the way that he was in prison, and how many times he went back and forth, and the prison itself, and we'll see at the end the musibah that Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, the prison says Qa'r al-Sujun, which means the bottom of the prison, something like you could say a dungeon, somewhere that would be completely dark. So when you see a person that suffers so much, obviously Allah gives reward in the same place for that person. And maybe that is one of the reasons we call Imam Musa Al-Kadhim Bab al-Hawa'ij. And in such a day, you'll see Saturday in Iraq, millions of people will go to his shrine. And there's a special importance they give to Bab al-Hawa'ij, Imam Musa Al-Kadhim. Inshallah, those that haven't gone, Allah will grant you the ziyarat of him, a very beautiful ziyarat in Baghdad, inshallah, in Kadhimiyya, of him and Imam Jawad alayhi salam. They're buried together there. Along with a lot of our ulama are also buried in Kadhimiyya, inshallah. Allah will bless you with his ziyarat. So we're talking about his life, 35 years of imamat. But his life, we ask, how is it possible that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam has passed away? 4,000 narrators, 4,000 students he has. But at the same time, Imam Musa Al-Kadhim, which is also known, some of the times when Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq was alive, Imam Musa Al-Kadhim would answer questions. They knew who he was. The Shias had power in Medina. What happens that suddenly one of the Imams is now in prison? And what happens that actually the affair of who is the next Imam becomes so hidden that some of the close companions of Imam Sadiq were confused, knowing who is the next Imam. The special ones, yes, they knew is Imam Musa Al-Kadhim. Those that studied the hadith from Rasulullah, the names were mentioned. If they were mentioned for sure, and we don't believe in some of the narrations that talk about Ismail being a Imam, or Bada' happening for Ismail, we say that those narrations talk about his death, not of his imamat, because umur hatmiya, things that will happen for sure, Bada' doesn't happen too. It doesn't change. So Imam Kadhim alayhi salam was meant to be the Imam. But what happened that Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq had to place 5 successors, a list of 5 successors, and some of the Khulafa is part of those successors, so he wouldn't kill all 5 because his own name is on that list. You see that it is the power that the Abbasid had, is the beginning of the golden age of Islam, they call it. And the Khulafa of the Abbasids get a tremendous amount of power, especially Harun Rashid. When you look at him in books of history, even though if you look at the book of Baghr al-Qurayshi, but Imam Kadhim mentioned that he would drink alcohol, and that it was prevalent around people that they started drinking because the Khalifas was drinking alcohol. They would praise alcohol. But you see in other books, they say, no way. Those that are muta'assib, they defend Harun Rashid. No way did he drink alcohol. You look that he would build, a crown that he had from jewels. Because of the richness, he moved his capital to Raqqa. Where Raqqa was recently, capital of whom? So he had it there. Why? To be closer to all the treasures and money that was coming in from the wars with the Byzantines. Very wealthy. Swords were cheap back then. Inflation, there's no inflation. Very powerful. So this shift of power caused Imam Musa al-Kadhim, which was an imam that was well known, time after Imam Sadiq, to be so oppressed. And you have Harun very clearly stating to kill the imam when he was in prison. And some of them, they did not want to kill him. They did want to get their blood, dirty with the blood of the holy imam. So it was a tough time. Time of tribulations, a time where the imam had many different tasks, many different responsibilities, but also his martyrdom was very heavy for the Abbasids, very heavy. That when you see after they martyred him, Imam Rida alayhi salam was preaching about wilayat more freely, because they were afraid because of the effect that the martyrdom of Imam Musa al-Kadhim had. Because the Abbasids are claiming to love the Holy Prophet of Islam, claiming to love Ahlul Bayt, claiming to hate the Umayyads that oppressed Ahlul Bayt. It's a very difficult time that Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam lived, this 35 years, where different khulafa and how he was still able to protect the religion of God, to guide people, to spread hadith. Some compiled the hadith of Imam Musa al-Kadhim and Mawsu'a with 3,000 hadith that we have from him, even though he was in prison for such a long time period. So therefore, when you look at his holy life, you see a life of worship, a life of piety. And for us, this is a very special imam because, as we said, being Bab al-Hawa'ij, to get our prayers answered. And many people, when they have problems in their lives, they do nadhr, they make a vow for Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, and it gets answered. So you see the opposite. You see a Khalifa having lavish food, lots of money. Sometimes they would say that Harun, his table spread would have 30 different types of food. Huge gifts to poets he would give Harun. Gifts to singers, his fondness of jewels, and of course drinking wine. Comparing that to Ahlul Bayt of the Prophet of Islam, a life of zuhd, asceticism, a life of spreading and teaching knowledge, a life of humility. Once Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, he have in Tuhaf al-Uqul. Tuhaf al-Uqul is a good book if you want to see very short maxims or hadith from Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. They saw him speaking and spending time with a villager. People were saying, why is the Imam, na'udhu billah, wasting his time, lowering his status to speak to someone that is in the most bottom, you could say, in the economic social class? And Imam Kadhim alayhi salam actually tells him this interesting thing in this hadith. He says, ثُمَّ أَرَضَ عليه السلام عليه نفسه في القيام بحاجة إن أردت له. If, he says, there comes a time period basically, if we need you, I need help from you, help me. The guy was in, the social, those high, weakest of economic class. The Imam is saying, if a time comes, I'm speaking to him, if there needs to be a time and I need help, help us, basically. And the people come to him and ask him, "O Son of God's Messenger, how do you sit with one and ask him to settle your needs while he is in need of you?" He is in need of you. Why you're asking him? The Imam Ma'asum is talking to him one time. In his humility, the Imam answers, he was one of God's servants. He is a brother in the book of God and a neighbor in the lands of God. He and we enjoy the same best father, Adam alayhi salam. Sometimes when you see people in society, imagine, we have so many people that nobody, they're disregarded completely because they don't have a home, they're left on the streets, and we completely ignore them. The Imam alayhi salam is speaking to him, speaking about him highly, and saying he was one of God's servants, a brother in the book of God, a neighbor in the lands. He and we enjoy the same father Adam and the same best religion, that is Islam. Perhaps our need will someday be in his hand. How do you know that one time we will be poor and that he will be rich? Because things change so fast. And that we may need to ask him for things. And we will have to sit modestly before him. So therefore you see the treatment of Imam Kadhim or Harun is sitting with those that lavish dinner and singers and poets. That the true Imam is the Imam of humility, Imam of divine guidance, the Imam of knowledge. Or you see other examples of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam narrate this beautiful hadith from the Prophet. So the knowledge that he spreads and teaches people, he teaches us humility, he guides us by his actions, leading by example, and teaching hikmah and wisdom. You see this beautiful hadith that he transmitted that Rasulullah said, دخل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم المسجد فإذا جماعة. Then there was a group of people when the Prophet entered the masjid, a person that they called Allama. Allama means to have a lot of knowledge. He had a lot of knowledge. And فقال وما العلامة. فقالوا, what's Allama? They said له أعلم الناس من أنصاب العرب. He knows the nasab. Arabs in general, they would memorize where they came from, who their forefathers were. And some of them, it was all the way him, all the way to which tribe they were and all the way back. So it's very important, someone that had ilm of ansab, of nasab, of the ancestors, genealogy. Waqa'iha, what occurred, what happened, ayyam al-jahiliyyah, what happened during times, history, history. Wal ash'ar al-arabiyya, or in poetry. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال النبي ذاك علم لا يضر من جاهلا. That type of knowledge, if someone doesn't know, it doesn't harm him. I don't know genealogy, I don't know Arabic poetry, I don't know history, it doesn't hurt me. ولا ينفع من علم. And that type of knowledge doesn't truly benefit someone. قال النبي إنما العلم ثلاثة. If you want knowledge and you're talking about the allama, there's three types of knowledge. The rest is fadl. The rest, fadl is excess, you could say. It's a type of, it's a virtue. But knowledge is these three. إنما العلم ثلاثة. آية محكمة, a clear verse, that is knowledge. أو فريضة عادلة, a permanent practice. أو سنة قائمة, just duty or permanent practice. So a clear verse, just duty, permanent practice. These things are knowledge. This is knowledge that someone knows he will be able to fulfill his duty in life. He will know how to make himself better, closer to God. He'll be able to guide himself. This is guidance. The rest is good. When you need to know it, you need to have a skill. That's good. You need to know it in order to be able to solve problems in this world. That's good. But that's not an allama. When you talk about the ilm and these things, these three. Clear verse, just duty, permanent practice. Sometimes this happens to us. This is a note for us that we think that someone has a lot of knowledge and he knows a lot about, sometimes we spend a lot of time learning things. They're good. I'm not saying don't stop learning, but what is more important? That knowledge that comes from God, that knowledge of religion, the knowledge that comes from Quran, from ahadith, that is the Sunnah of the Prophet of Islam and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Is that more important? Or things that we learn, we spend a lot of times? It's good. Sometimes people ask you questions and you get amazed sometimes. Like, you spend so much time studying something that is just, now inshallah they study history, this and now today they're just studying other things, just like a game, how to play it for like hours, how do you play this game? And instead learning knowledge that benefits them. Learning hadith, because in the narrations we have, know the worth of our Shia, but how many hadith they know. Or dirayatul hadith, how much hadith and sayings of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt do they understand? This is the importance that Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, the narrating, is don't call an allama just a person that knows history and poetry. These are good. But the true knowledge that has virtue, and someone that seeks it, angels follow them, and animals do istighfar for him. If we were to realize and put these two knowledges together, you would see the nur and light of Islamic knowledge, how great it is, and how much time do we pay for, importance do we give to that compared to other knowledges, which is, according to Prophet, fadl. It's not ilm even, ilm. So you see the life of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam of knowledge. Abu Hanifa complained to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam in one of the books that his son was praying at a place where people walked before him. You shouldn't pray, they say, don't pray in front of me, they block you sometimes. Because why? You're blocking your connection with God, or with, So then Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi salam arrived and said to Abu Hanifa, he mentioned, and he says, my God is nearer to me than people who pass in front of me. My God is closer to me than these people that are passing in front of me. Therefore, no one can come between me and him. See how knowledge answers. So no one, it does not matter if you're walking or not. God is closer than me than people are. And you see the life of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam and the way that he would guide people. One of the things that Harun would do was test the Imam. And in prison, in the darkness of prison, torturing the Imam, you see that he would send in this hadith, in Manaqib ala Abi Talib it has, he would send someone, a lady, to be at the service of the Imam, to test him with the lady. To tell people, look, that person that is just worshipping and that's very pious, I want to expose him, na'udhu billah. I want to show you how he's like, how his true, I give him a test that he will fail and ruin his reputation. So they come, and after a while they see this lady that was someone that was full, her life of entertainment, of dancing, of singing possibly, come to the Imam alayhi salam, and the Imam sees her, and with the way that the Imams are, and we really believe that the final guidance of Islam comes from the Imams. That you have the guidance of the Quran and the guidance of the Prophet, the guidance of the Imams, but for us that final guidance that guides everyone and the rahmat of Allah is through the Imam. And it doesn't matter how bad you are, how evil you are, if you still have some goodness in your heart, the Imams will guide you. So Imam Kadhim alayhi salam is presented with this test. And still you see the inayat of Ahlul Bayt. Not only do they pass this exam, but they guide someone that maybe everyone else in society think we cannot be guided anymore. And they see this person transform with just meeting the Imam. Transform, and seeing her, taqul quddusun subhanaka subhanak, seeing her and Harun, and they were surprised to see her transform. They thought, okay, we got the Imam now, we tricked him. But actually she was worshipping Allah. She was saying, oh Holy One, glory to you, because all she would see him praying in prison, praying in Dhuhr and Asr and Maghrib, Isha, praying and doing Salat and in sujood, long sujoods and worship, and being able, that inayat of the Imam, that blessing that the Imam gives sometimes to that person, no matter who they are. You see Hur, for example, that blessing that Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that guidance that he gave to Hur, a Yazidi, at one instant, Hur gets guided. So that guidance that the Imam has, it's either through speech, through action, or it's that through that tasarruf that the Imam has, and being able to show them realities and being able to show them if they deserve it. And as you look at actually divine guidance in the Quran, Allah guides, Allah opens people's hearts to Islam. There are many people, you can talk about Islam day and night. You can bring them the most strongest of proofs. If there's not inshirah of the sadr, if the chest and breast is not open, they will not become guided. Some people, they're ready for guidance. You say one thing to them, one story, one event, something silly sometimes, and their life completely changes. So when there is that capability, that inshirah, the Imam, being the Imam of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, gives that highest level of guidance, and that is the guidance that we're looking for from Imam Mahdi ajallahu ta'ala farajah. The Imams have that tasarruf. One of the du'as in the month of Rajab that we have, and some people say, it's hard for me to read this du'a because I don't understand it, is this line, is La farq baynaka wa baynahum illa annahum ibaduk. There is no difference between you, God, and hum, Ahlul Bayt, except this, the fact that they are your slaves, they are your servants. What is this dua to understand divine guidance of the Imams? What is this? How can you understand this? There's no difference between a human prophet, say Imam, a successor in God, except that you're a servant. How can you understand this hadith? One of the ulama and mufassirin of the Quran say it this way. When you say that there's no difference between God and Ahlul Bayt, it means this, that in terms of his essence, there's huge difference. There's always a difference between essence and dhat. Because God is wajibul wujud. Ahlul Bayt are mumkinul wujud, are not necessary existence. God, he exists by himself. Dhatan laysa kamithlihi shay. Nothing is like God, his essence. But this can refer to fi'l of God, an action of God. That the action of God, there is no difference between the action of God and the action of Ahlul Bayt. Meaning that whatever God has the power and ability to do, Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam have the power and ability to do. God has it dhatan, but Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam have it, taba'a, in terms of following God and getting that permission from God. So when you see these lines in Ziyarat, here it says Ziyarat Rajabiyya, or you can say the Dua of Rajab, you see that the possibility to have these powers, to have these, as one of the scholars says, when you look at lines like this, you see that whatever guideline you learn from this is that whatever virtue you read about Ahlul Bayt, you should accept it, except those that would compare God to human, or Ahlul Bayt to God, na'udhu billah dhatan. But in terms of power, that if you believe that a human being can have those godly powers, and this is through their wilayah takwini, that wilayah that God gives them, not power that they have by themselves, powers that they get from God. And this is, throughout the Quran, you see the power the Prophet Musa alayhi salam had, Prophet Khidr has, for example, the knowledge he had, or Prophet Musa alayhi salam with his staff had, or you see the power that, for example, Isa alayhi salam had, a power that many others have in the Quran. You understand there's la farq, there's no difference baynaka wa baynahum. There's no difference between God and Ahlul Bayt, illa annahum ibaduk. But a human being that is complete can have godly powers, but that power is not independent. That power needs to be given, has to be granted by God. And therefore you see that the divine guidance of Imam Musa Al-Kadhim in this last way is a guidance that he can open up somebody's heart if they deserve it, and that can have tasarruf, can change somebody's heart. And that is the type of inayat and love that we're looking for from Imam Zaman, Ajala Ta'ala Farja, who is our Imam. That you notice that when it comes to us, that the best way for us to get guided, you can read hadith, you can read and study Quran knowledge. It calls upon action, it calls upon guidance. Or you can look at the lives of the prophets and imams, you can become guided. But that Kamaluddin and that Tamamun Ni'mah, that final type of guidance and that completion of God's favor, is through that specific guidance that the Imam of the age gives to you, your Imam gives to you. Just like Imam Musa, Al-Kadhim, gave to someone that was a singer or dancer and turned into a worshipper of God. And they say a few time period afterwards, she died a death of Iman. So we are also looking in the same way to get and ask for that inayat from our Imam, from Imam Zaman. And this happens through that relationship, through always thinking about him. Once I was asked, is it bad to not think about Ahlul Bayt throughout the day? Is it bad to forget them? I said, in general, tawassul is strengthening. It's not wajib. It's just strengthening your connection with God. But it is bad as followers of Imam Zaman, of Imam Mahdi, to forget your Imam. Because then you're just delaying the ghaibat. You're delaying the occultation. You're delaying the faraj from happening. You're lengthening the occultation. And also, in the same way, not thinking of him, you're depriving yourself of those benefits that those that they act, their actions are for Imam Zaman. They always think about the holy Imam. They reflect, they cry about when the Imam Zaman's name comes. They connect to him, they think about him. You are, in reality, harming yourself. You are depriving yourself because we believe that the Imam is the sun behind the clouds. That inayat and attention that the Imam gives is an attention that if it hits us directly one day, then our entire life we would be guided for the rest of our lives. So we are looking at the same way that God brought Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, even though he was in prison, even though he had that difficulty with a very difficult king or ruler, a Khalifa at his time, but he still prevailed. And he still guided, had 3,000 hadith. He still guided with his actions. And he even guides, through his grave today. Many people are guided when they come to the shrines of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. Look at the hadith when it comes to his guidance after his death. That you have in different sources, for example, you see that the importance, for example, in Khatib al-Baghdadi mentioning that one of Al-Hasan ibn Ibrahim, Sheikh of the Hanbalis, quoting that every time, no problem I faced, and then went to the grave of Musa ibn Ja'far and entreated him, except that God the Almighty facilitated towards what I liked. Sheikh of the Hanbalis. And what book? And from Khatib al-Baghdadi. From Imam Rida alayhi salam, we have anyone who visits my father's grave is like the one who visits the graves of the Prophet and Ali ibn Abi Talib. And another hadith is narrated to say someone who visits him, the reward will be visits my father is like the reward of visiting Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So the Imams alayhi salam have this ability and they are the divine guides, A'immatul Huda, in terms of speech, in terms of action, and in terms of that metaphysical guidance that they give, and that inayat that is granted to them. And Imam Musa Al-Kadhim alayhi salam, we said that he is one of the most madloom imams. If we can dim the lights, inshallah, we'll reflect and think about him. And that is why we can say crying for Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam is so important. Because you're looking for that rahmat, that khas, that specific rahmat of Allah to enter your heart. That is why we need to focus on crying for Ahlul Bayt, remembering them, and having our children remember Ahlul Bayt, having them get accustomed to crying for Ahlul Bayt, listening to the stories of Ahlul Bayt. In Misbahul Za'ir, there's a ziyarat of Imam Kadhim. And this ziyarat gives detailed information about what happened really in the dungeons, in the prisons. Ziyarat Nahiya gives information about how Imam Hussein alayhi salam was killed. And this ziyarat from Misbah Zar talks about how Imam Musa Kazim alayhi salam was in the prison. Talks about wal mu'adhab fi qa'r as-sujun. And he was mu'adhab, means he was tortured. Not only did they keep him in prison, the holy Imam shouldn't have even been sent to Baghdad. He shouldn't be sent by force anywhere. He was the Imam of the age. But they put him in, it says, qa'r as-sujun, the bottom of jails, and tortured, it says mu'adhab. They would torture him. Harun would torture Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. وَالظُّلَمِ الْمَطَامِرِ, the darkness of cells, complete darkness. Imagine being somewhere, and they do have photos of some of the prisons that Imam Kadhim alayhi salam has. No windows, dug deep, so deep that this matamir means it was so humid, because Iraq is an area that has rivers. It is a humid area, and when you dig deep, when you get closer to water. So they dug so deep that the cells of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam was dark, was humid. And if that was not enough, the ziyarat says, Lisaq al-mardud, that one of his legs was bruised by rings. Being in prison, being in a dark, humid prison, being tortured, and having your leg being chained up so much that your leg would be bruised. This holy leg would be bruised. And the Imam, his dua, you can still hear it today. Ya Sayyidi, najjini min habs Haruna wa khallisni min yadeh. Imam Musa, I call them, that has kadhmul ghaib, that had so much patience, clemency, that he would say, this is enough for me. Ya Allah, save me from the prison of Harun. Ya Sayyidi, najjini min habs Harun. Save me, my master, from the hands of Harun. And khalnisni min yad Harun. And Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi salam was given this poison. This poison, they say, when they poison Ahl Bayt alayhim salam, it's as if a snake bites you. You twist and turn, and you are in deep pain. There it says that in some of the books we have that Imam Kadhim alayhi salam they came to him and finally said, do you want to have a burial shroud? We'll give you a burial shroud. Which is Sandi Shahik narrated. When Imam Kadhim alayhi salam was dying, he poisoned him. I offered to enshroud him. I said, do you want to have a kafan? Do you want me to enshroud you? He said, we, the Prophet's family. In that stage, imagine, poison. We, the Prophet's family, should cover the expense of our first pilgrimage, the dowries of our women, and our coffins from our legal fortunes. We will pay for our coffins, our burial, our shrouds ourselves. Those that understand Rawdas and Majalis of Ahl Bayt, they know this. This is a sign to say that soon Imam Rida, my son Ali ibn Musa Rida, will come. I don't need your burial shroud. Soon Ali ibn Musa Rida will come, and he will bury me, and he will take care of me. Wala yawmaka ya Aba Abdullah, ya Imam Hussein alayhi salam. It is the night of Friday, the night of crying for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the night of ziyarat. Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi salam was poisoned by Harun. He had a funeral. People came to his funeral, so much so that some even fell off the bridge. Many people came for this funeral. But may we be sacrificed for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. The 3 days and 3 nights his headless body remained in Karbala, and the deserts of Karbala, with no one to bury him. Ya Aba Abdullah. You were waiting, Imam Musa Kadhim, for your Rida alayhi salam, for your son. But Imam Hussein, in front of you, your Ali Akbar, your Ali Asghar was martyred in front of you, Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Wala yawmka yawmaka ya Aba Abdullah. Ya Allah, we ask you because of the name of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, the martyrdom, the blood of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, have mercy on the soul of Brother Syed Mahmoud Fakhruddin, inshallah. Ya Allah, we ask you cure all of our sick, inshallah, especially the children, inshallah. Ya Allah, all of the marhumeen, inshallah, all those that have passed away, forgive them, inshallah. Ya Allah, give us guidance. Give us guidance from knowledge. Give us guidance from the actions of the Imams. Give us guidance from the metaphysical powers of the Imams, inshallah. Ya Allah, allow us to remember Imam Zaman, inshallah, more. Allow us to not die in this world and to say that he didn't recognize, he didn't have knowledge of his Imam. Give us ma'rifatul Imam, inshallah, and allow us to share the name and inshallah make others aware of Imam Zaman, inshallah. Expedite his return with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. May Allah grant all of your hawa'ij because of Bab al-Hawa'ij, Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. If there's any questions, inshallah, I'm at your service. If you have any questions, I'll answer them. Yes, go ahead. If I know the answer.
You mentioned something in your speech. I was wondering if you could elaborate on it. I haven't heard it before. That there's a certain type of hidayah or tawassul that only none of your time can give you. So for us, Imam Mahdi, could you maybe elaborate on that?
Yes, all of the Imams guide us, but there's more, you could say, a special connection between your living Imam and you. Because you are, when they raise everybody with their Imam, you will be raised with your Imam. So therefore, you have responsibility to follow him, to love him, to know him, more than any other Imam, obviously, because he's your Imam. And this responsibility, if we do not fulfill it and the Imam uprises, and we don't have knowledge of him, and we don't have that attention, that love of him, that connection, we could even not even know who he is, because or not na'udhu believe in him. There are many people that during the time of the Prophet of Islam had signs that who the Prophet was, the final seal of messengers was. But if they didn't have that connection to him, or that true iman or faith with him, then it would be difficult for them to really believe and anticipate and await, for him, as how you can say Lady Khadija alayhi salam awaited for him, was of the muntadhirin and muntadharat, you could say. So yes, we have that specific duty to get inayat and to get blessings from Imam Mahdi Ajjallahu Farajah, more than all Imams are nur, but we have more of a responsibility to know the Imam of the age. And how do you get to know them? That ma'rifah is not only book knowledge, it's also spiritual knowledge as well. Inshallah. And do dua that inshallah we can go not to know him. Ayatollah Wahid, I saw in a crying at the age of 100 after reading all these books and fatwas he passed, and as a marja, crying and talking to Imam Zaman, saying, I apologize that I have not known you, I have not come to know you, and I have not spread your knowledge to others. So this is something that I think all of us will regret if we don't get to know him, inshallah. Any other comments or questions? All right, well, thank you, and let's recite another salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Let's recite Ziyarat al-Warith together, inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله، السلام عليك يا وارث نوح نبي الله، السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله، السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله، السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله، السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام، السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلت ولعن الله أمة ظلمت ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن، بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. بأبي أنت وأمي يا ابن رسول الله، بأبي أنت وأمي يا أبا عبد الله، لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل السماوات والأرض. فلعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتهيأت لقتالك. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، قصدت حرمك وأتيت إلى مشهدك، أسأل الله بالشأن الذي لك عنده وبالمحل الذي لك لديه أن يصلي على محمد وآل محمد وأن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة. صلوات